My beloved brothers and sisters, there comes a point in your life where the pain of holding on becomes heavier than the fear of letting go. And it's in that moment when your heart says, Ya Allah, I accept what you've written, that something shifts not just around you, but inside of you. You begin to rise. You see, we struggle because we keep fighting what Allah has already decreed. We try to control the uncontrollable. But the moment you say, I trust you, you're no longer resisting His mercy, you're walking into it. And that is where true peace begins. Acceptance doesn't mean giving up. It means giving in to a plan that is wiser than yours. It's not weakness, it's worship, and Allah has promised indeed with hardship comes ease. Surah Ash-Sharh 94:6. So if you're tired, confused, or lost, maybe this is the moment. The moment where you let go and let Allah raise you, restore you, and guide you to exactly where you're meant to be. 1. The struggle before surrender. Before surrendering to Allah's plan, the heart often goes through a storm of confusion. You question everything, why your du'as are delayed, why your pain keeps increasing, why the answers seem silent. But the struggle is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of your sincerity. Even the Prophet ﷺ cried out in hardship. Your cries, your restless nights, your silent frustration, they are seen. Allah never abandons the one who turns to Him with a trembling heart. The struggle is not wasted. It softens the soul for what's coming. Sometimes Allah allows the pain to linger so that you reach a level of humility you would have never found in comfort. Look at Yunus in the belly of the whale. His real surrender came after the struggle. He had to feel trapped, forgotten by the world before he turned completely to Allah. Our struggles are our whales. They isolate us, shake us, and finally bring us to a realization. No one can help us but Allah. That's not a punishment, that's purification. It's during the struggle that your prayers become real. Not rushed, not robotic, but full of tears and trembles. It's when the soul finally begins to speak, what the tongue had memorized for years doesn't just become a verse. It becomes your reality. Allah hears it from your brokenness, and that brokenness becomes the doorway to your strength. In the struggle, your faith is not tested to break. It's tested to awaken. Think of Maryam exhausted, alone under a palm tree. She cried out in despair, wishing for death. But it was right there in that moment of complete emptiness that Allah sent her relief. The date tree shook, the stream flowed, and the miracle was born. Often it's just when you feel you can't go on anymore that the ease begins. Allah allows you to bend, not to break, but so you finally let go of control and witness His power. Many people feel guilty for struggling, as if true faith means you're always calm. That's not true. Even the prophets had moments of intense fear, sadness, and frustration. What matters is not the absence of struggle. It's who you turn to in that struggle. Allah doesn't expect perfection. He expects connection. Even if all you can say is, Ya Allah, help me, that is enough. In fact, sometimes that's all your heart truly needs. The beauty is when the struggle is finally over, you'll look back and realize it shaped you. It deepened you. It made your heart more reliant, your prayers more sincere, your vision more eternal. Allah never wasted your pain. You needed that night to value the light. And now as you surrender, you're not falling, you're rising, because those who submit to Allah never lose. They are simply being prepared for something far greater than they imagined. 2. What true acceptance looks like in Islam. True acceptance in Islam is not a passive act. It's a conscious, deliberate trust in Allah's wisdom even when your heart is aching. It's looking at what didn't work out and saying Alhamdulillah with tears in your eyes. It's when you stop trying to control what's beyond your reach and start focusing on pleasing the one who already controls everything. Acceptance is not giving up. It's giving in to the one who knows the full picture. In the Quran, Allah teaches us that He plans with precision. Nothing is random. Every delay, every heartbreak, every test, it's crafted with care. Acceptance begins when you stop seeing your hardship as a punishment and start seeing it as a path to closeness with your Lord. The pain might still be there, but the heart no longer resists it. Instead, it turns that pain into dua, into patience, into quiet strength. Think of Prophet Ibrahim. When he was commanded to leave his wife and child in the barren desert, true acceptance was in his feet as he walked away, not knowing how they would survive, but knowing that Allah had instructed him. It wasn't easy, but it was trust, and that trust led to the miracle of Zum. That's what true acceptance looks like. Letting go of your own understanding and leaning entirely on Allah's promise. Acceptance in Islam doesn't mean you won't feel sadness. Maryam felt deep anguish even while being chosen by Allah. Salah cried until he went blind. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam buried multiple children with his own hands. Pain is not proof of weakness. It's proof that you're human, but what Islam teaches is this. Even in sorrow, we say, even in loss, we remember our return is to Him. When you truly accept Allah's decree, your complaints turn into conversations. You don't just say, why me? You say, Ya Allah, guide me through this. You start recognizing that your situation is not happening to destroy you, but to direct you. You stop asking for the storm to disappear and start asking for the strength to walk through it with dignity and faith. True acceptance shows in the way you treat others during your own hardship. You smile even while you're healing. You give even when you're waiting to receive. You forgive even when you haven't yet been healed. Because deep down your heart knows whatever I do for Allah, He will return it in ways beyond my imagination. Acceptance isn't just internal, it's visible in your character. In Islam, acceptance is deeply connected to tawakkul, reliance on Allah. It's not passive sitting, it's active faith. You tie your camel, you do your best, and then you say, Ya Allah, I leave the result to you. Whether things go how you want it or not, you still say, Alhamdulillah. That's the beauty of a heart anchored in Allah. It finds peace in both abundance and restriction. Prophet Musa stood at the sea with a terrified nation behind him and an enemy approaching. From the outside, there was no escape. But he said with full certainty, My Lord is with me. He will guide me. That's the language of acceptance. It's calm in chaos. It's faith when nothing makes sense. It's the soul's refusal to panic because it knows who is in charge. Acceptance doesn't mean you don't ask Allah for change. It means you keep asking while also trusting that the current moment is exactly where you're meant to be. You raise your hands in dua, but your heart is not desperate. It's assured because it knows if it's delayed, it's wisdom. If it's different, it's mercy. If it's denied, it's protection. That level of peace comes only from Allah. In your quietest moments, you'll find acceptance growing when you reflect on how far you've come. Remember the times you thought you'd never recover, and yet here you are. That's Allah's mercy. That's proof that His plan was always at work, even when you couldn't see it. Sometimes just surviving is a sign that Allah was with you the whole time. True acceptance is when you stop living for the outcome and start living for Allah's pleasure. You stop chasing certainty in this world and start chasing nearness to the one who controls it. And that shift changes everything. Your goals become purer, your heart becomes softer, and your vision becomes clearer. This world is no longer your destination. It's just your journey. And finally, when acceptance settles in your heart, you feel light, not because the hardship is gone, but because the resistance is. You walk slower, breathe deeper, and smile more, not because life is perfect, but because you know it's divinely orchestrated. You trust that whatever you lost, Allah will replace. Whatever hurt, He will heal. Whatever confused you, He will clarify. And that trust is where your real strength begins. 3. The turning point from resistance to reliance. There's a moment in every believer's life when something shifts, a breaking point that becomes a beginning. The heart, once heavy with resistance, starts to soften. You no longer fight what's happening. You no longer demand to understand everything. That's the turning point, when your tears change from frustration to submission, when instead of asking why me, you whisper guide me. Resistance is rooted in fear, fear of losing control, fear that what's ahead will break you, fear that Allah's plan might not align with your own. But when the heart realizes it was never in control to begin with, peace starts to enter. You don't surrender because you've given up. You surrender because you finally trust the one who never gave up on you. The Quran reminds us of this moment in the story of Musa alayhi standing at the Red Sea with an army behind him and no path ahead. His people panicked, but he said calmly, "Indeed, my Lord is with me. He will guide me." That was his turning point. When the outward reality looked impossible, he still chose reliance, and that reliance became the doorway to the miracle. From resistance to reliance is not a straight path. It's filled with relapses, doubts, and moments of weakness. But with every prayer, every cry in sujud, every whispered husband closer to Allah, you may stumble, but you're still moving forward, and Allah sees that effort. He loves it. He nurtures it until your heart stops wrestling with His decree. Reliance is not laziness. It's not doing nothing and waiting for everything. It's doing your part while resting your heart with Allah. You apply, you try, you plan, but you no longer panic because deep down you believe if Allah wrote it for me, it will come, and if He didn't, no power in the world can make it mine. That mindset changes everything. Sometimes the turning point is not dramatic, it's quiet. It comes when you're lying on your bed after a long, painful day and you say, "Ya Allah, I leave it to you. No one else hears it, but the heavens do." And that moment, though small in appearance, is massive in meaning, because that's when your heart begins its journey from chaos to calm. Reliance means you've stopped tying your happiness to outcomes. You're no longer happy only if something happens. Instead, you're content because you've chosen to trust. Realize that Allah's plans are always better than your own, even when they hurt, even when they confuse you, even when they're not what you wanted, because He sees what you don't. In Islam, reliance is an act of worship. It's not a mindset. It's a spiritual posture. It's knowing that your job is to strive, and Allah's job is to deliver what's best. Even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was taught to rely on Allah completely during battle, during rejection, during loss. His heart was trained to lean on the eternal, not the temporary. Many people feel they can't rely because their faith is not perfect, but Allah never asks for perfect faith. He asks for sincere heart. He asks you to try to turn to Him again and again, even when your mind is still unsure, even when your past haunts you, even when your heart is tired, because reliance doesn't come after clarity, it brings clarity. There's a beautiful irony in Islam. The more you rely on Allah, the stronger you become. The more you surrender to Him, the more power He gives you, not worldly power, but spiritual resilience. You begin to carry burdens differently. You smile in storms. You find light in places that used to be dark because you now see life through the lens of divine wisdom. Every storm you face is an invitation not to panic, but to rely, to say, "I don't know how, but I know who." That shift changes your duas. They become deeper, less desperate, more trusting. You stop begging for outcomes and start begging for nearness to Allah, knowing that closeness to Him is the real victory, no matter what happens in this world. And when reliance becomes your way of life, you become unshakable, not because life stops testing you, but because your soul no longer fears the test. You walk with dignity through difficulty. You respond with prayer instead of panic, and you rise not through force, but through faith. That is the power of a heart that has turned from resistance to reliance. 4. Sabr activates your rise. Sabr isn't just patience, it's power in silence. It's the strength to remain still while your heart is breaking. In Islam, Sabr isn't weakness, it's an active choice. Keep your faith firm, your tongue pure, and your heart steady even when everything around you is falling apart. It is through Sabr that you begin to rise, not outwardly at first, but inwardly where it truly matters. Every believer who rises with Sabr. Look at the stories in the Quran. Every prophet went through seasons of waiting, pain, rejection, or loss, but they didn't give up. They didn't speak out in anger against their Lord. Instead, they practiced deep patience, and through that they were elevated. Allah is not unaware of your struggle. He's preparing your soul for something greater through it. When you are patient, you are not delaying success. You are deepening your roots. Trees don't grow tall overnight. They spend years strengthening underground before they even break the surface. In the same way, Sabr builds the foundation for your growth, your character, your connection with Allah, your resilience. It all grows in those unseen moments of struggle. Sabr doesn't mean you stop feeling. It doesn't mean you don't cry. The Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam cried when his loved ones passed away. He felt sadness, pain, even fear. But what made his Sabr special was that he never allowed those emotions to make him lose trust in Allah. That's the example we follow. You can feel deeply and still be among those with the highest level of Sabr. Reward for Sabr is not just in the afterlife. It begins here. The Quran says, indeed, Allah is with the patient. Imagine that. The creator of the heavens and the earth with you, just because you chose to stay calm, stay faithful, and not lose hope. That closeness gives you light in your darkest hours. You may be tired, but you are never alone. When you respond to hardship with Sabr, Allah elevates you in ways no human effort ever could. You might not get the exact result you wanted, but you get something better. Peace of mind, clarity of heart, and the companionship of your Lord. That spiritual rise often comes before the worldly one, and it's more lasting, more fulfilling, and more real. Think of Ayyub. He lost everything, his health, his family, his wealth, but he didn't complain. He didn't say, "Why me?" He stayed in remembrance. He waited, and when Allah restored him, he gave him back more than he had before. That's the pattern of Sabr. It delays, but it never denies. It tests, but it always transforms. Sabr gives your heart the space to breathe even when life feels suffocating. It allows you to pause before reacting, to reflect before speaking, to choose prayer over panic. That inner control gives you strength that others can't understand. They see you standing, smiling, enduring, and wonder how the answer is always with Allah. True Sabr is silent. It doesn't announce itself. It's found in the mother who keeps trusting Allah while raising her children alone, in the student who fails but tries again, in the man who walks away from haram even when it breaks his heart. These are the real heroes. They rise every day, not in headlines but in the sight of Allah. Every time you choose Sabr, you are building something. Maybe you can't see it yet, but Allah can. You're being shaped into someone stronger, wiser, more compassionate. Sabr is not passive waiting, it's active growth. You're being prepared for blessings you don't yet see and positions you're not yet ready for. But through Sabr, you will be. Sabr is the gatekeeper of greatness. Without it, talents are wasted, faith wavers, and anger wins. But with it, your purpose becomes clear. Your tests become tools. Your delay becomes development. Many people fail not because they weren't capable, but because they weren't patient. Patience unlocks what talent alone never could. When the world tells you to react, Sabr teaches you to respond with wisdom. It trains your ego. It humbles your soul. It protects your heart from impulsiveness. In every argument, every hardship, every delay, patience gives you a higher vantage point. You're no longer reacting from pain. You're moving with purpose. Even in victory, Sabr is required. When success finally comes, Sabr keeps you grounded. It reminds you who brought you here. It protects you from pride and keeps your heart connected to Allah. Because Sabr isn't just for struggle, it's for every stage of life. It's a companion, not just a momentary shield. Allah promises in Surah Zumar, indeed the patient will be given their reward without account. No number, no limit, just pure reward from the most merciful. That's how much Allah values your restraint, your tears held back, your trust maintained. Every second you were patient is recorded and rewarded. So when you feel like you're being buried by life, remember you might actually be getting planted, and with Sabr you will rise again, stronger, closer to Allah, with a heart that knows. The rise wasn't in avoiding the test, but in walking through it patiently, gracefully, faithfully. 5. Qur'anic stories of rising after surrender. The Quran is not just a book of rules, it's a book of real human stories, and again, it shows us the pattern. Those who surrender to Allah rise. Not always immediately, not always in the way they expected, but always in a way that transformed their lives and brought them closer to the divine. These stories are not just for reflection. They are for your strength. Take the story of Yunus. He left his people in frustration, boarded a ship, and ended up in the belly of a whale. In the depths of darkness, physically and spiritually, he remembered Allah, and when he surrendered fully, saying, "There is no God but you. Glory be to you. I was among the wrongdoers." Allah raised him from the ocean to the shore and restored his mission. His rise began with humility. Then there is Musa, a man who fled Egypt as a fugitive, alone, afraid, and uncertain. Yet when he turned to Allah, Allah turned him into a prophet, a leader, a miracle bearer. He returned to the land he once fled, this time not running but guiding. His rise was not despite his weakness, but because of his surrender. He allowed Allah to lead, and that made all the difference. Maryam is one of the most powerful examples. A young woman alone and pregnant, misunderstood by her people. She surrendered to Allah's command without fully knowing the outcome. And in that surrender, she became the mother of Isa, a symbol of purity, patience, and trust. Her story teaches us that even in complete isolation, Allah can lift you to unimaginable heights. Think of Ibrahim Izetam, asked to sacrifice what he loved most, his son. It was the ultimate test of surrender. And yet, when he submitted fully, Allah replaced the sacrifice with a ram and honored him for generations. His legacy lives in the rituals of Hajj through surrender. He didn't lose his son. He gained closeness to Allah and a status unlike any other. We also see the story of you betrayed by his brothers, sold into slavery, thrown into prison, all for years. But throughout it all, he never stopped turning to Allah, and when the time was right, Allah raised him to power and reunited his broken family. Asif didn't rise by force. He rose through quiet surrender and consistent character even in darkness. Ob suffered through years of illness and isolation. He lost wealth, children, health, but never lost his faith. His dua was not one of demand but of deep humility. Indeed, adversity has touched me, and you are the most merciful. That soft plea born of surrender led to complete healing and restoration. His rise was not loud, but it was lasting. Zechariah prayed for a child, even in old age, knowing the odds were impossible by worldly standards, but he didn't let go of hope. And when he finally surrendered the matter entirely to Allah, Allah granted him Yahya, a child pure and wise. This was a rise not just in fatherhood, but in legacy, and it came after years of quiet, unwavering trust. And spent centuries calling his people mocked and dismissed. Yet he kept obeying. When the time came, Allah instructed him to build an ark. Something that made no sense to those around him, but he didn't question, he surrendered, and through that ark he was saved. His rise wasn't just survival. It was in being the only one who truly followed divine guidance. The people of the cave in Surah Al-Kahf were young men who stood against the falsehood of their time. They left everything behind to preserve their faith. Allah placed them in sleep for years, and when they awoke, their surrender became a story for all generations. They rose not with armies, but with courage and conviction born from surrender. Even Adam, after his mistake in Jannah, shows us how surrender leads to elevation. He didn't justify or blame. He repented sincerely. Allah accepted his words and forgave him. It was in that moment of humble return that Adam was honored again. In Islam, it's not falling that defines you. It's what you do after. Surrender lifts the sincere. The people of Badr, outnumbered and unequipped, stood before a mighty army. But they had one weapon the world couldn't see, full surrender to Allah. they didn't rely on their strength. They relied on His help. And that trust brought victory against all odds. It wasn't numbers that won. It was submission that raised them. Bilal, a former slave tortured for saying, Ahad, Ahad, one God, surrendered his comfort and safety for the truth. And because of that, he rose to be the first muezzin of Islam. The man once beaten on the sands of Mecca was now honored on the rooftops, calling the faithful to prayer. That's what surrender does. It lifts you in ways people can't. Left alone in a barren desert with her child, ran between two hills in desperation. But in her heart was full submission. She didn't resist Allah's decree. She obeyed and trusted, and from her steps Allah brought forth Zum, a spring that still flows today. Her surrender wasn't forgotten. It became sacred. All these stories are not just history, they're instructions. They show you that the path to rising is not through resistance, but through surrender. When you let go of control, when you stop fighting Allah's plan, when you trust Him even in pain, that's when you begin to rise. Not always with ease, but always with purpose, always with Him. 6. Emotional detachment and spiritual freedom. Emotional detachment in Islam doesn't mean being cold or unfailing. It means learning to love without clinging, to care without being consumed. True spiritual freedom begins when your heart is attached to Allah, not to outcomes, not to people, not to this world. This doesn't kill emotion, it purifies it. It makes your heart whole, not needy. The Prophet ﷺ loved deeply his family, his companions, even his enemies. But his heart belonged to Allah first. That balance is what gave him peace in hardship and strength in loss. His love wasn't rooted in dependency. He could let go when Allah willed because his heart was anchored in the eternal. That's the goal of every believer. Many people confuse attachment with love. But in Islam, love is sincere when it doesn't enslave you. If you can't imagine peace without a certain person, place, or outcome, you've placed your heart in a fragile place. Emotional detachment is recognizing that all things are temporary, and that your peace must be tied to what never leaves, your Creator. When your happiness depends on things staying the same, your soul will constantly feel anxious. This world is designed to change, people come and go, success rises and falls, even health fades. But Allah remains. And when you shift your focus from temporary attachments to timeless connection, a new kind of calm enters your life. Detachment is not indifference. It's presence with perspective. You give your best. You love deeply. You show up fully, but you hold the results lightly. You say, Ya Allah, I did my part. Now I leave the rest to you. And with that, you breathe easier. You become less reactive, more reflective, less shaken, more rooted. Ibrahim was tested with the thing he loved most, his son. His willingness to sacrifice showed not that he didn't love, but that he didn't idolize. That's the mark of spiritual freedom. When your heart can love something deeply yet give it up for the sake of Allah, that is real detachment. And that is where elevation begins. Spiritual freedom doesn't mean escaping pain. It means no longer being owned by it. You still feel disappointment, grief, even heartbreak, but you don't drown in it. Why? Because you've built your identity on something higher. You know that this life is not the source of your worth. Your soul is connected to the one who wrote every chapter. When you detach emotionally from outcomes, you stop fearing the future. You understand that Allah's plan will always unfold whether or not it aligns with your desires. That surrender brings strength. You stop needing life to go your way in order to be okay. You start needing only Allah, and that need will never disappoint. One of the greatest acts of worship is to walk away from something your heart wants because your soul knows it's not good for your deen. That's not loss, that's liberation. When you can let go of what is haram or harmful, Even if it hurts, you're choosing Allah over your own ego. And Allah always replaces what you give up for His sake. The dunya is meant to disappoint. It was never meant to carry your entire heart. And when you accept that, you stop expecting too much from people, status, or even love. You start appreciating without becoming attached. You enjoy without becoming enslaved. That shift turns everything into a blessing, nothing into a burden. Think of the Prophet Sallallahu, who alayhi wasallam, after bloody, exhausted, rejected, yet his heart turned only to Allah. As long as you are not angry with me, I do not care. That's detachment in its purest form. He didn't need approval from creation. His eyes were fixed on the Creator, and because of that, he rose from rejection into victory. Emotional detachment allows you to forgive easier. When you're not clinging to expectations, you stop holding people hostage to your pain. You release them not because they deserve it, but because your peace deserves it. Islam teaches us, let go for the sake of Allah, and He will fill your heart with something far better than revenge. Spiritual freedom gives you consistency. You're no longer riding the highs and lows of people's opinions or the day's success. You serve, you strive, you remain grateful whether you're praised or forgotten. That kind of emotional independence is a superpower. It makes your life calmer, your ibadah deeper, and your mind clearer. Even your relationship with your own self changes. You no longer obsess over your image, your failures, or your timeline. You understand that your worth comes from being a servant of Allah, not from achievements or validation. That freedom gives you the space to grow without the pressure to prove. And when you finally reach that point where your heart is present but not possessed, loving but not longing, caring but not controlled, you'll taste a freedom the world can't offer. You'll walk lighter, you'll sleep deeper. You'll worship better because your heart will finally be where it belongs, with Allah and not with this dunya. 7. The signs that Allah is elevating you. One of the first signs that Allah is elevating you is when life becomes uncomfortable, but your heart becomes soft. When you're being stripped of attachments, tested with delays, and left with only Allah, He's not punishing you. He's purifying you. When the world starts rejecting you and you begin turning inward and upward, know that a transformation has begun. Elevation doesn't always feel like a rise. Sometimes it feels like a fall. But in Islam, falling into sujud is the highest place you can reach. When Allah draws you closer, He often removes distractions, people, plans, even your sense of control. Not to break you, but to prepare you for a level of strength and clarity you never had before. You'll know you're being elevated when your dues change. You stop asking only for outcomes and start asking for patience, for wisdom, for nearness to Allah. That shift in supplication is powerful. It means your heart has matured. You're not chasing the dunya. You're seeking the one who owns it. That's elevation. Another sign is when you begin to love solitude, not out of sadness, but out of peace. When silence becomes sacred and reflection becomes your refuge, your soul is moving higher. Many people are afraid of being alone. But those whom Allah is elevating begin to crave that quiet because it's in solitude that hearts are shaped. If Allah allows you to see your own flaws, that's a mercy. It's a sign He's preparing you for growth. When you start noticing your anger, pride, laziness, or ego, and you feel humbled, not hopeless, that's a gift. Allah does not expose your faults to shame you, but to shape you. Self-awareness is the first step to spiritual rise. You're being elevated when you start letting go of arguments. When peace becomes more important than being right. When forgiveness feels lighter than holding a grudge. That inner shift doesn't come from weakness. It comes from strength. Allah is softening your heart so He can raise your rank. Silent patience often speaks louder in the heavens than loud victories on earth. When Allah places you in hardship, and your first response is that's a sign of elevation. Not everyone remembers Allah in ease, fewer remember Him in pain. But when your reflex becomes instead of panic, your heart has already ascended beyond the ordinary. Elevation often begins when you lose what you once thought you couldn't live without, whether it's a person, a plan, or a version of yourself. And yet in that loss you find peace that's not accidental, that's spiritual growth. Allah removes the false supports from under you so that you finally stand firm on Him alone. You'll know Allah is raising you when you're more concerned with how He sees you than how the world does. When likes, followers, recognition, or approval begin to feel hollow, you no longer want to impress people. You want to please your Lord. That shift from image to sincerity is one of the greatest elevations of all. Another sign is when your sins begin to disturb you more than your worldly failures. When missing a prayer hurts more than missing an opportunity. That's not guilt, that's guidance. Allah is awakening your soul and showing you the weight of what truly matters. That sensitivity to the unseen is a sign of a heart being drawn closer when Allah makes your worship sweeter, your tears more sincere, and your nights more reflective. It's a gift. You could be anywhere doing anything, but your soul longs for a saga, for a moment alone with Him. That longing is not random. It's a sign that He has chosen you for intimacy, and that intimacy is elevation. You're being elevated when the things that once triggered you no longer control you. The person who insulted you, the plan that failed, the door that closed, they still happen. But now you respond with calm, not because you're numb, but because you've learned to trust Allah's wisdom more than your own emotions. When you're given the ability to help others while you yourself are struggling, it's a sign of elevation. Allah is using you as a vessel of benefit despite your pain. That's not a burden, it's an honor. Some of the most beloved people to Allah serve others quietly while battling their own storms. That service lifts them higher in His sight. You'll know you're rising when you feel peace in places that used to bring you pain. When you can walk into the same situation and not feel the same wound, that means Allah has healed something inside you. Healing is not just recovery, it's promotion, a sign that you're no longer chained by what once held you down. And finally, when you begin to find beauty in tests, light in loss, and presence in pain, that's elevation. Not because life got easier, but because your soul got stronger. You now see hardship as a doorway, not a dead end. And through that doorway, you're walking toward a closeness with Allah that this dunya can never give. 8. Acceptance is not weakness, it's strength with Allah. Acceptance in Islam is not giving up, it's giving in to the will of the one who knows what you don't. It's a quiet, firm strength that says, even if I don't understand this now, I trust that my Rabb does. To accept is not to surrender to circumstance, but to rise above it by anchoring your heart to divine wisdom. Many people confuse acceptance with defeat, but the Prophet ﷺ, who alayhi wasallam, accepted the decree of Allah with tears in his eyes and pain in his heart. He grieved, he wept, but he never questioned Allah's plan. That balance is what defines strength in Islam. The ability to feel deeply and still submit completely. That is not weakness, it's power rooted in. When you accept what Allah has written, you stop resisting your reality and start responding with faith. Resistance drains your energy, fills your heart with anxiety, and clouds your ability to grow. But acceptance brings clarity. It shifts your focus from why is this happening to what does Allah want to teach me through this. Think of Musa's mother. She placed her newborn son in a basket into a river, not knowing what would happen next. Was that weakness? No, it was the highest form of strength, acting upon Allah's command despite the uncertainty. Her acceptance of His decree led to her son being returned, honored, and protected. That's the fruit of submission. Acceptance doesn't mean you stop making dua. It means you continue to ask with full hope, but you're no longer attached to outcomes. You say, Ya Allah, if it's good, bring it. If not, take it away and grant me peace with your will. That dua is not small. It's massive because it requires a heart that trusts the unseen more than the apparent. When you accept you stop comparing your life to others. You don't look at someone else's ease and feel deprived. You look at your test and feel chosen. That perspective protects your heart from jealousy, resentment, and bitterness. You no longer need your life to look a certain way. You just need your Lord to be pleased. Acceptance brings emotional maturity. You stop needing closure from people. You find closure in prayer. You stop needing everything to go your way. You trust that Allah's way is better. You let go not because you don't care, but because you care too much to let your soul be enslaved by what is out of your control. In the story of Asaf, acceptance is woven through every chapter. He was betrayed, imprisoned, forgotten. Yet he never fell into despair. He accepted each phase with grace, and Allah raised him to power, honor, and reunion. His strength was not in force. It was in patience, trust, and surrender. That's real strength with Allah. True acceptance is shown when the plan changes, but your heart doesn't panic. You pause, you breathe, and you say, Alhamdulillah. Anyway, not because it all makes sense, but because your faith in Allah is bigger than your fear of uncertainty. That steadiness is what makes a believer resilient, calm in chaos, steady in storms. Sometimes Allah withholds what you want because He's strengthening what you need. Your reliance, your discipline, your vision, and when you accept this, life becomes lighter. You're no longer dragged by what you lack. You're driven by what you're learning. You start seeing delay as development and pain as purification. There is strength in saying, "This hurt me, but I trust Allah." That sentence holds a mountain of faith. It shows that your heart can break and still bow to the will of the most merciful, that you can feel sadness without surrendering to despair, that you can feel loss and still say with meaning, acceptance doesn't erase emotion, it redirects it. You still cry, you still long, but your longing becomes a conversation with your Creator. You bring your broken pieces to Him, not to be judged, but to be healed. That act of surrender is what opens the doors of mercy, clarity, and eventual peace. It's not passive. It's transformational. You know, you've reached acceptance when your heart is no longer tied to what was, but to what could be with Allah. The past no longer imprisons you. You're not chasing what left. You're focused on what remains, your relationship with your Lord. And with that as your anchor, you're already rising no matter what life looks like on the outside. Even in relationships, acceptance brings freedom. You stop begging for love that's not written. You stop forcing doors that are meant to stay closed. You honor your feelings, but you follow your faith. You understand that if Allah removes someone from your life, it's not rejection. It's redirection, a path away from harm, even if it doesn't feel like it yet. And in that full acceptance, your soul finds rest. Not because life became easier, but because your lens changed. You no longer measure your worth by your circumstances, but by your trust in Allah. That's the moment you begin to rise, not through resistance or control, but through surrender. And that surrender is the highest strength a believer can hold. My brothers and sisters, life will always bring moments we don't understand. Delays, rejections, closed doors, unexpected losses, but none of it is random. Allah, in His perfect wisdom, is arranging every detail with love, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment. When you accept His, you're not giving up. You're handing your burden to the one who never tires of carrying it. And when you do that, your soul begins to rise slowly, steadily, beautifully, because it's no longer fighting reality. It's flowing with it. Allah says in the Quran, it may be that you dislike something while it is good for you. Surah Baqarah 2:216. This is not just a verse. It's a reminder that behind every hardship, there's hidden mercy, and behind every pause, a divine push forward. So as you leave this video, don't just accept your situation. Accept Allah's plan with an open heart. Because the moment you do, that's when your real journey begins. And by Allah's permission, that's when you rise.